Hello, Void. How are you? All right. So back on Shutter Trek, and ended up with another Lucio Fulci movie, City of the Living Dead. Oddly, I seem to have watched his trilogy of the Dead or Gates of Hell trilogy in a strange order, going from number 2 to 3 to back to 1 here, but they really are not directly connected, so it didn't particularly matter. Now, before I started this going through Shutter thing that I've been doing, I'd never actually seen any of Lucio Fulci's work. I was familiar with it, but I hadn't actually taken the time to see any of it. Now I've seen Zombie, The Beyond, House by the Cemetery, and now City of the Living Dead. And for the most part, I've enjoyed the work relatively. For me, it's not great, but I can respect a lot of it. The effects, in particular, amongst all of them, are pretty good. The only one I didn't really care for was House by the Cemetery, but that was mostly probably due to the terrible dubbing. And maybe due to the idiotic actions of the character. Or of the child character, Bob. Well, City of the Living Dead, much better than House by the Cemetery. I think From Beyond is my favorite Fulci movie so far, though. Now, City of the Living Dead. It starts with a seance going on, and our lead medium sees a priest hang himself, and apparently the location he hung himself at was not a good one to do, so it opened the gates of hell, and now undead are starting to come through. And if these gates are not closed by All Hallows Eve, we're going to have a problem. So, she goes into a bit of a... then passes out and is mistaken for dead, but a passing newspaperman finds her and, digs her back out of her grave. I will say, the scene with her in the grave was pretty intense, of her coming to, being trapped, and then with him trying to get her out with a pickaxe and almost impaling her every time. I will say that scene had a lot of tension, particularly with Fulci's habit of putting sharp objects through people's eyes. Actually, I don't think that happened in this movie. Drill went through someone's head, but nothing in the eyes this time. Anyway, I digress. So, they decide they have to go down to Dunwich, up to Dunwich, down to Dunwich, wherever Dunwich is, and stop all this undead. Meanwhile, some families are having some problems with some people who are dying are getting back up, and some creepy zombie actions going on. Mostly involving a psychiatrist, his very young girlfriend, and a patient that he's seeing. The patient is beginning to see something lurking about, finds a body suddenly in her house, and while his girlfriend assistant goes missing, and then turns up undead and keeps showing back up. So, and it's all up to them to come together when the two groups meet to stop this undead priest and close the gates to hell. Okay. Well, first, Fulci does occasionally drop Lovecraft references in. Necronomicon appearing. This one having the town of Dunwich show up. So I always appreciate that. Now, the effects are not the greatest, but I've seen worse. And some of them are actually pretty good. This movie feels like a Lucio Fulci movie, and having seen enough of them, I can actually say that now. This one definitely feels Fulci. For the most part, it's a little bit slower moving, but that really wasn't a problem for me. It starts off a bit slow, but it does pick up. Some tension moments are legitimately tense. My only real gripe with this one was the ending, where I'm not going to spoil exactly how the ending goes, but the last shots, It sort of looks like it's setting up for a "here we go again" moment, like a lot of horror movies do. But they don't actually show us why. They just show you think everything's okay. Two characters appear, and they see a kid character that they've been seeing before come running towards them happily. Then their faces suddenly turn to horror and end. Now, I've heard several different variations on why this ending is the way it is, but the most common thing was something happened that the original ending was not usable, and they had no budget to reshoot. I heard a coffee got spilled on the negatives. I've heard it was lost. I've heard it was destroyed in a storm. I heard something just didn't film right, and they couldn't use it. I heard a lot of different things, but the end of it was the ending that was planned wasn't be able to be used. So this really, if they just wrapped it up a couple little seconds before, it would have been fine. But we don't know what the intended ending was. Yeah. Overall, it was fine. I'm not big on Fulci. I respect his work, but I'm not very big on it. I really did like the Beyond, but beyond that, this was okay. I'll give it a 5 MacGuffins. It's worth seeing if you like Fulci or just Italian exploitation films in general. It's got some entertaining scenes to it, and the buried alive scene was particularly thrilling. So definitely give it props there. It's worth a watch, but I'm not rating it very highly because it does have its problems. Fulci characters do some confusing things sometimes, and some points are slightly nonsensical. And the ending, while I understand that there was a problem, they still turned in a product that it didn't end properly, so you still lose points for it. So 5 MacGuffins. See you soon.